Good evening, my beautiful butterflies and fly guys. Listen, I know you're ready to get into tonight's discussion, so without pause, let's get right to it. Ladies, have you ever been concerned when you see other women dressed so provocatively in places you deem inappropriate? Have you ever uttered the phrase, "I would never wear that in a place like this"? Well, perhaps that place for you is the mall, your place of business, or even at church. And for you, it was simply wrong. All right? Listen, tonight's discussion, we will key in on that particular topic in our discussion concerning real talk. Sometimes wearing less clothing is plain wrong. Did you guys get that? Sometimes wearing less clothing is plain wrong. So listen, you don't want to miss tonight's discussion because it's going to be a really good one. So listen, I want you to go ahead and grab your favorite beverage and tell Lottie Dottie and everybody that we're live. And listen, we will be right back after this. Are you ready, AB? All right, let's get it. Hit it. Yeah, in the building.
He's fashion. I'm telling he's spoke. He's fashion. So bad. He's spoke. Fashion. I'm telling he's spoke.
Again, thank you for joining us. And I'm glad that you have taken time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation. And tonight's discussion, it centers around an event that took place recently concerning now former NFL superstar wide receiver Antonio Brown. So if you aren't aware of this event, let me cue you in. During, I believe it was Saturday's football game against the New York Jets, it was versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This star receiver, and I'm taken aback by this, but he was seen removing his shoulder pads and undershirt and parading around in the end zone, throwing his gloves and shirt to the onlooking fans. Wow. Now, if that sounds a bit off to you, this story continues to get even better. So as many of you may or may not be aware, Antonio Brown has had his share of, I would call, questionable events over the past few years. And I would suggest and say that it was since, I believe, his departure from the Pittsburgh Steelers. There were the countless number of court cases, from being sued from his landscaper, from his chef, and even his barber. No, he should have sued his barber for that haircut. But no, I digress. Listen, the last incident prior to this one was simply that he submitted a fraudulent COVID-19 vaccination card to the NFL, which allegedly was reported by the chef who sued him. Now that one left, if you're like me, it kind of left you baffled, because I began to wonder what kind of chef would be allowed access to his personal information. I would say that would be something personal. Nevertheless, this pattern of prior questionable acts played into many summations as to the reason behind the incident during the game. But I must say this, that I do like how one of the greats, that is none other than Mr. Tom Brady himself, responded in the after the game interview concerning his now former teammate. And he simply said that we should take time to consider what's going on before we are to pass judgment. And so for whatever you might say about the GOAT Tom Brady, in that moment, I believe he acted better than the rest of us. Now, I, for one, did have questions surrounding his mental state, and that is Antonio Brown's mental state. But I reserved my final opinion until now. So let me start by asking you that here, did you formulate any opinions concerning Antonio Brown's mental state when you saw him parading around shirtless, tossing his gloves into the stand during the game? Did I mention that? Did I mention the game was still being played and that it looked like the Jets were going to pull off the upset victory? Yeah, so I see some comments already. It be your own people. Oh, yes, I would concur. But listen, what observations did you make concerning what you believed happened? Did you see a pattern? And if so, did that pattern play into your observation and subsequently your opinion of the matter? Yes, I would concur. Someone says, A-Star says, no, he's been acting a little off for a couple years now. Would you concur with that assessment? But did that pattern play into your observation and subsequently your opinion of the matter? If we would be honest, many of us would agree that the moment we saw his nakedness on the field, we felt that AB was in trouble mentally. No, not my AB now, not AB in the studio. No, but Antonio Brown. See, I believe, and hear me close, I believe that it is embedded in most of our psyche that when we see people almost naked in inappropriate places, we think there's something wrong with them mentally. So for instance, when you are at the bodega on the corner on a hot sunny day in Brooklyn and a guy comes in like this, come on now, do you grab your whatever you go get and get out the way? Oh, listen, when you're in the subway after a long day at work and then you're going to hit the train back to Jersey, but on the subway, the guy jumps on the train and it looks like this. Now look, that looks like the same guy that was in the bodega. But listen, subconsciously, there's a level of discomfort we all feel, I think, when we see nakedness again in inappropriate places. No matter how hot it is, there's never a need for men to go shirtless in a public place unless there is a swimming pool around. And listen, there's also never a need for a woman to be topless in a public place unless that place involves a pole and making it rain, all right? Hey, I'm just saying. Hey, listen. In the back of our minds, I would say there's this perception that connects the dots. Now, hear me close, right? It connects the dots between the lack of clothing in certain spaces, and it connects the dot to mental health. So let me help build my case by saying many times, for example, we see a person who perhaps experienced substantial weight loss, and then they began to dress in ways they never would have before, unless your name is Lizzo, right? If your name is Lizzo, then you just do it all, right? It doesn't matter. You are afraid to look. I celebrate Lizzo. No hate here. I celebrate her confidence in all things dealing with her weight. All right? So I celebrate that. And while I celebrate also anyone who has lost weight on purpose, I'm only mentioning this for the sake of this discussion. And the point I want to make is that because their mental state has changed, they connect that with the change of how they dress. And most of the time, they end up wearing less clothing than more clothing. Prior to the weight loss, many of them would never be caught in public wearing something like this. Right? I mean, come on. But after the weight loss, they're walking around in such nakedness becomes a norm. And listen, if this has happened to one of your girlfriends, listen, you are so happy for them, but embarrassed by them at the same time. Come on. It's just us. You can admit it because you know it to be true. But how can you be happy for them and at the same time ask them to tone it down a bit? They, of course, would think that you're hating on them and convince themselves that you can't go with them into their future because the preacher told them that some people could accept you when you were struggling, but can't accept you when you no longer must play second fiddle to them. Now slap your neighbor high five if you've heard that preached before. Now listen, now your friendship has now reached irreconcilable differences, all because they misunderstood your intent. But is there a way that they can be reached and your friendship be salvaged? Well, listen, I'm glad you asked. This is He Spoke Fashion, and I'm the host, Daylon Thomas, and this is where we discuss women's fashion from a man's perspective. And this is where I believe you can get the help you need. All right, let's move on. So the Antonio Brown incident, it provides the perfect backdrop to underscore our discussion here tonight. Let's look at that comment from A Star. It says, when dealing with an African American man in general, it's always mental health first when acting out. Do you agree with that? I think so. I think there is a bit of truth to that statement because normally, and I'll just go there, normally we know how to behave, but sometimes when we are provoked, certain things come up in us and we turn on that angry black man, that type of thing. And it could be because of years of being ridiculed and ostracized, having to work extra hard for the same job and less pay, having to prove ourselves over and over and over again. And sometimes that just builds up and we have a mental breakdown. We throw a fit, a conniption there is. And so I do concur with A Star. Let me know what you think of that subject. Mental health when it comes to the African American community. I won't just limit it to men because we know our dear sisters deal with a lot of things just as we do. So the Antonio Brown incident, it provides, in my opinion, the perfect backdrop to underscore our discussion tonight. Here at He Spoke Fashion, we like to take events involving the famous as well as the not so famous to use to tell truths about fashion and how we receive and perceive fashion. Get that? How we receive it and what's our perception concerning fashion. And so tonight, I want to focus on how men perceive fashion, and in this case, the less clothing that makes up some women's fashion. Again, real talk. Sometimes wearing less clothing is simply plain wrong. So in my post that I posted on both Facebook and YouTube, I stated that I will explain the age-old statement, less is more. And I said that because I felt that some, unfortunately, of my beautiful butterflies are misinformed concerning the true meaning of that statement. So many of you believe that statement means the less clothing you wear, the more appealing it is to men. Come closer. Come on, come closer. Let me school you on some game. The only men that believe that along with you are not trying to wife you, but to bed you, my dear. And unless you are into just starting it up, then I would suggest you listen closely to the meaning that the real ones adhere to when it comes to the statement, less is more. Are you ready? What men, and I'm talking about real men, mean by that statement is that showing less skin leaves more for the imagination. Come on, I got to get some claps on that. Come on, give me some claps in the comment section. Less skin leaves more for the imagination. So you ask for the truth, but some of you, sadly, you can't handle the truth. I think that one way we can see if you are a viable option, both butterflies and my fly guys, to help to influence truth to this generation and the generations to come, is to simply play this game. You guys ready? You guys want to play this game with me? Come on, let me see some thumbs up in the chat. If you're ready to play this game with me, come on, let's get ready. Are you ready? Hold up. Stop the show. Excuse me for interrupting your viewing pleasure. But listen, we are almost to the end of the show, and I haven't asked you once to do this, but if you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, I would love for you to hit the subscribe button below. And if you are watching on Facebook, could you please hit like? Doesn't cost you a thing. Now, back to the show. Let's get ready for our game, all right? Yes. Are you ready to play?
Is
Fashion Jeopardy! All right. Are you ready to play Fashion Jeopardy? So on tonight's show, we will only have 2 categories for your perusal. So go ahead and tag somebody and tell them, let's play this Fashion Jeopardy. See how knowledgeable you are and how much influence you have in sharing this truth. So let's prepare ourselves to play and to win big, because someone's fashion esteem may be at stake, or it may even be your own fashion esteem that is at stake. So let's look at our Jeopardy categories, and we're going to go with category 1. And that category is simply, what would you do? And let's pull that question up. What would you do? All right. So your BFF shows up at church wearing this outfit and ask your opinion. Let's show that outfit. Oh. Lord, in the front row, please Help the pastor to keep his eyes stayed on you, Lord. Oh, hey, glory. Help him keep him stayed on you, my God. All right.
Bruh.
So what would you do? Your friend showed up wearing this and asked for your opinion. What would you do? I'm waiting. Let's see, what would you do? Shout out to A-Star. Shout out to Maureen. She says, no. Yeah. What would you do? Let me hear you. If they showed up wearing that, now let me ask you a question. Because it's all in how you respond, not necessarily oftentimes what you say, but how you say it is important. Some of you probably shouldn't say anything. Say, let's skip this Sunday. Go to Bedside Baptist. Nevertheless, if they are perhaps an unbeliever that desires to go to church, would that change what you would have to say to them concerning that wardrobe appearance? What would you do? Oh, we're going to get down into this in upcoming shows, because there's been a lot of preachers that I've been seeing that have started to talk about the congregants and the nakedness up in the sanctuary. Put that photo back up there, please. Yes. I remember I was watching a preacher. He was having a lunch. I can't think what he called it. He's out there on YouTube. And he was giving tips during lunch. And he told the story of how when he was just a young preacher, and he was there to preach that particular Sunday, and the ushers ushered down some young ladies, or maybe it was one young lady. He said the young lady had legs for days. And a short skirt on, probably like this, right? And they set the young lady or young ladies, I can't recall which, in the front row. And you know what? I love it when preachers keep it real. He said he had to pray hard to get through that message. And he said it was the usher's fault. That's right, the usher's fault for ushering them down to the first row. All right? You know, don't come throwing a lap cloth on them after you done ushered them all the way down there. Nope. Yes. Oh, I hear from Desi Wakefield. She said, I would say it with love and concern. Listen, I love that answer. Listen, come on, if you like that answer, come on, give us some hand claps, give us some hearts. I love that answer. If you do things with love and concern, I believe that anyone will receive it in the right manner. At least that's what I'm learning. Listen, my bishop talks about love all the time and how we should draw them through love and kindness. Shout out to Bishop Campbell. Yes, shout out to Bishop Campbell. He is teaching us well. And listen. So we got some answers there. I love it. Stephen Ridley, he gives us some hand claps there. Steve, what do you have to say? I would like to hear from you, my friend. Listen, so let's move on. So he's talking about what would you do in that case. Let's go to our second category. All right, are we rolling? We're rolling. Our second category is simply this. It is simply alternatives. All right? Alternatives. Let's ask that question. Your BFF really wants to wear this particular outfit to the white party. All right, it's a party. Is this appropriate? That's the first part of the question. Is this appropriate? Okay, it's a white party. It's not church. It's a white party. I could assume, and I would presume, that it is summertime. All right? She wants to wear this outfit. Is this appropriate? And let's put up the B clause of this question. What alternative would you recommend, if any, to her instead, and why? Let's play that music. We got to give them some time to think about this one. I see a response right now from Mia Purcell. She says, yes, depends on the party. Depends on the party. Let's hear from the rest of you. I want to hear from you. Oh, now see, I love it. I love it. Stephen really says, it looks good to me. Yes, yes. Okay. All right, time's up. Time's up. What say you? Okay, Mia said that and a blazer. All right. Listen, I just gave you a very good nugget there when I said when we say less is more, remember, we're saying less skin gives more for our imagination. And so listen, while I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with this outfit, again, I don't want to be anecdotal, but sometimes we contribute the lack of clothing to something going wrong in our mental status. So this was a white party. Stephen concurs. He says, maybe a jacket just in case. Just in case it's cold. It gets cold sometimes, right? Maybe it's getting cold, yeah! But I just love the idea of having that blazer. You know what? Sometimes that other piece of clothing, it's just a piece of comfort, right? Something you carry around just in case. You just never know. Someone spills something on you. You don't want to go around with a Long Island iced tea or your skirt. No, you want to have something to cover up just in case. I concur. So, I love the answers. Jonathan Campbell said, do they still have shawls? Listen.
Bruh.
I love it. Now she... Listen, now, if she showed up to the white party with a shawl... now, that might be something with the mental too, right?
Oh, my God.
I'm telling you, listen, I'm having fun. Yes, Teresa Dollard says, yes, the jacket is required. Jonathan says, give that child a shawl. Listen, you guys are being qualified. I love it. I love the back and forth here, but I think we all can agree that there are alternatives. And so I know that this may sound a bit prudish to some of you, but however, the aim tonight is to offer you an alternative. And not to say that every time you wear less clothing, that is wrong. There is an old saying that goes, and it simply says this, that variety is the spice of life. Yes, we all want surprises. That was Tony Robbins adding on to that. So do you mean to tell me that you don't think it to be a bit strange when everything a person wears shows more skin than clothing? Let me hear from you. If you see someone that just wearing in everything, when they come to work, everything shows skin. When they go to play, when they're at the mall, when they go to the gym, everything is just nakedness. There isn't a preconceived notion that there is a mental issue. I mean, even if that issue is esteem, that is a frame of mind, self-esteem. Again, I ask you, when you watched the Antonio Brown spectacle, did you not think when he took off his clothes, there was a mental breakdown? Let me hear from you. This was during the game. Did you think there was something going on. Again, we heard from A-Star earlier. Men, help me help the beautiful butterflies that are watching, and help those that will watch later. Remember, we said less is more means less skin equals more for our imagination. And what we can imagine is always more than you could show us. And I would suggest, and I would surmise that it's probably the same for women. The less skin we show them, the more they can imagine. Wouldn't you agree? Yes, absolutely. Stephen Ridley says, I agree. Yes, absolutely, says Desi Wakefield. And we concur. There has to be some mental issues that either we can look back and we can say, you know what? I noticed when she started dressing that way, and I knew there was something wrong. It happens all the time. And this show was to show and to share that there are always alternatives. Listen, I have really enjoyed you all on tonight. I thank you all for joining me in the comments section. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion. Remember, tonight's discussion was not to label anyone who wears less clothing as simply being mentally unstable, or to say that in each case that they are wrong. But my goal, and I hope and pray that it was reached tonight, was to say to you all that if you don't have any other alternatives in your wardrobe, then perhaps you should check your mental state. Listen, mental health is wealth. We may have missed out on the Powerball this time, but we have gained another perspective concerning alternatives via this discussion. Well, thank you all for joining us. That's all I have for you tonight. Have a good night, good fashion, and remember, he spoke fashion to you. I hope to see you next week. Hope you will join us again. Good night. Yeah!
He spoke fashion. I'm telling he spoke fashion. So bad. He spoke fashion. I'm telling he